Welcome to Easy Vibes. We believe in having conversations with different kinds of people from all walks of life from all over the world. And I am your host, Chico Moya. And in this episode, I had the pleasure of having a conversation with Mike and Derek. So I recently went to Copenhagen for the first time. And while I was there, I was put into contact with them. They have their own podcast. They are Americans who are currently living in Denmark. So I thought it would be really cool to sit down with them and have a conversation. And that we did. We basically spoke about our experiences, mine in Finland and theirs in Denmark. And I guess how different it is from back home. And it was a really fun conversation. And I know that you will enjoy it. And you are welcome to follow them on their socials as well. And on Instagram, they're Rob Trotting. So I'll try to put all the links below and all that sort of stuff. But apart from that, enjoy this conversation.
How did you end up in Finland? Because I'm sure that experience is probably similar to a lot of our listeners and some of our international people living in Denmark. How did you get to Finland?
Yeah, it's probably a story that many people understand. I was an export. I moved to Finland for a woman. I'm originally from Cape Town, South Africa. And then I moved to Finland. I won't lie. Before I moved to Finland, I had no idea that Finland existed. Like, genuinely, am I allowed to cuss on here?
Of course.
Okay. As time went on and we started dating and stuff, I decided to move. Well, we decided that it's best for me to move to Finland. And I won't lie. At first, I hated Finland.
Really?
Yeah. It was cold, man.
Yeah. I mean, Cape Town is a beautiful city, wonderful climate. I could see it being a bit different.
No, it was, and the language was pretty whack to my ears, at least. And as time went on, something really strange began to happen. I began to fall in love with the place. The things that I previously hated, I began to love, even the freaking language. Like now the language to me is like black coffee, you know? It's not for everyone, but once you're into it, it's rich, it's strong.
An acquired taste?
Yeah, an acquired taste, but it's quite flavorful. And that's how you know I've been in Finland for so long, because we drink a lot of coffee there.
Yes.
Do you guys drink a lot of coffee here?
It's a big coffee culture in Denmark as well. Yeah.
Right.
And all hours of the day. That's something I don't know in South Africa if that was your experience too. In the US, we generally don't drink a lot of coffee after maybe lunchtime. You know, it's kind of rare if you're drinking coffee late in the afternoon, but here it's,
Yeah, but here it's common where like you'll meet, like a very common thing you'll have in Denmark is they'll be like, oh, do you want to meet for a coffee? And like, not at like 10 o'clock in the morning, like at 6 o'clock at night. And like the coffee shop, it blows my mind. Like a lot of the coffee shops don't open until maybe 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Whereas in the US, they're open at like 5:30 in the morning. So you can get that early cup of joe to start the day.
Yeah.
Oh, where about in the US are you guys from? I didn't ask you that when we were talking earlier, yeah.
Philadelphia. Yeah. So Northeast. So yeah. Yeah. And we like our coffee there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I feel like it's
usually
more,
on the way to work. It's more of a morning.
yeah, it's part of the ritual as opposed to like a bonding experience. Like a
Right. Because I've got some brothers living in the US, and I remember I went to go visit Chicago. I feel like I need to go back to Chicago to redeem that experience.
Were you there in wintertime or in summertime?
Winter was fast approaching.
Okay.
It was like the end of the fall. Wait, am I tripping? Yeah. I almost got the seasons confused.
Northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. You gotta remember where you are. Yeah.
And yeah. So anyway, when I was there, and in the morning, it was just as you described, like people lining up for coffee or whatever. But it also seemed like I don't know. Correct. It seemed almost like a cool thing to have a coffee in your hand and walking to work. Where in Finland, it's like you don't drink coffee, you die. Like you,
it's
like
not an accessory. No, it's a requirement.
Like you actually need the bloody coffee. It's not oh, look at me, I've got my Starbucks coffee. We don't even really give a shit about Starbucks.
Was there a moment, what was it that changed for you? Was there a specific moment you can think of where suddenly you're like, holy shit, Finland is home? Or was it evolution for you? Like, how did that transition happen for you?
That's a great question. I think, what's the best way to answer this? I think there were certain things that started to change slowly. Like the weather was still shitty, but I began to appreciate it in certain ways. Like, you guys call it hygge here, where it's dark and cold outside. So I make my apartment as cozy as hell. And like, I sit there, watch films. And I mean, obviously the weather is still difficult, but I also learned that there are certain things that I can do to help my experience. Like, for example, I realized that I wasn't taking vitamin D. I realized that my whole outlook was a bit skewed because you cannot compare a country or the weather in Finland to the weather in South Africa. It's just, you're going to drive yourself crazy, even comparing summer to winter, right? Each season has its own gifts, and the ability to be able to find the beauty in each season is very Finnish. It's like hey, it's cold as hell, so go ice swimming. It sounds like an oxymoron. Right. It's like, go ice swimming, go do a sauna, and all this sort of stuff. So as I began to notice some of those things, I found that my perception of Finland began to change. And there were also things like, hey, I dropped my laptop in a bus, like I forgot it in a bus, and it came back to me.
Right.
And I was like, that's kind of nice.
That's a unique experience. Yeah, in the US, we wouldn't expect that either.
Oh, yeah, right?
Yeah.
And my phone was in my back pocket and it slipped out and it fell like under the seat. And I was like, shit, like I've lost my phone. Like it's gone forever. I had to come back to the apartment to message like the friends on Messenger on my laptop because it was gone. It comes back. So I literally tracked the train all the way to its end and then timed it when it came back to Central Station. And there's a guy sitting in the seat. I was like, do you mind standing up? And he was like, what? Like, what do you want? I'm like, do you mind standing up? He stood up and there was the phone sitting right there behind him on the seat. And I was like, thank you. I walked right out the train.
Yo, that is awesome. Yep. What do you think it is about Denmark and for me, Finland as well? What do you think, what is the structure around the society that allows for those sort of things to occur?
I think, for me, there's always the classic comment that it's high trust societies, that if you're here, you kind of assume that people are going to do the right thing.
Right.
I think there's also a funny side of it, which is it's also a culture where you kind of keep to your own business. And so, like, if somebody was probably on the bus and saw that laptop, they wouldn't be like, ooh, let me go steal it. They're like, that's not mine.
Yeah.
And kind of let it be. So I just think it's kind of a mix of those two things of just assuming the right thing will be, but also like kind of being like, that is not mine. I should not touch that. I should not engage with it. So I think it's a little bit of that. That's my take. What do you think?
I also think that there's a bit of like societal, like, I think everybody knows, I think it's maybe a Nordic trait that things tend to work pretty well in the Nordics. And I think that there's a little bit of like pressure at a societal level of like, it works well because we all make it work well. Yeah. So you have that sort of social contract and you have a bit of that thought of, I think no matter where I was living, if a friend of mine said, I found this laptop on the bus and now I have a new laptop, I would judge them and be like, that's not good morals. But here, I think it's even more extreme where somebody would really, I don't think anybody would would go and brag about that because they would be so afraid of how they would be perceived and judged by their friends because they would lose trust with their other friends.
Yeah.
And that may be the case in other places. I do believe that, I like to believe that in the US people would still be judged for doing that. But I think here there's a bit of like responsibility to one another.
Yeah.
And a bit of like, it's on us to preserve this trust, that it's on us to preserve that everything works well.
Yeah, no, I completely get you. And I also think it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Also,
You know?
Because generally,
You can get a laptop. I'm pretty sure, like in Finland, we've got a lot of like no interest payments for things. And like, why would you taking someone's laptop? Where would you even go to break it open?
Right. But it's also very much, I think it's a very practical mindset of, I already have a laptop. Why would I need a second laptop?
Right,
like there's a bit of a privilege that kind of comes with that as well.
people being well taken care of so they don't need to.
Yeah.
You're less inclined to do those sorts of things. I think there's also a bit of it too, where it's a very, I think, and kind of both of you said it in this way, it's a very collective mindset.
Yeah.
And so you kind of lose that individual of, like I'm going to go make myself this thing, whether it's a societal pressure, just trust or whatever else. I think it all kind of blends together in that way. I mean, at the same time, I think through a lot of parts of the world, like people generally do the right thing. Just maybe it's a touch more up here.
Yeah, I would say South Africa, if you drop a phone, it's gone before it hits the ground, right? But I think over there, it's a little bit more of this idea of like, you eat or be eaten.
Sure.
The system is so broken and has left people so stranded that they have to look after themselves and their own. Yes, of course, within that space, you do get like psychopathic behavior where people just want to take more than they need. But, and I'm not saying it's right to take anything, even if you need it, right? But it just creates the society of like, hey, another man's loss is my gain.
Right. It's kind of zero sum in that way.
Zero sum, exactly. Whereas in Finland, for example, the systems, because systems and how well systems work in a country either make the country good or shitty, right? Yeah. And the systems work pretty well. I mean, they can always get better, but they work pretty well. So there are still people who fall through the cracks, but it just kind of, it's a good system. And that's why I think those things take place. Yeah, probably.
I think if you're going to survive in a region and a climate like this, historically, then you're going to have to rely on others, and the way to do it is by having that trust and having more of a community aspect. It's a bit more difficult to get by.
Talking about community, what is it like here in Denmark? And do you find it easier to find a Danish community?
Ooh. Yeah, I would say that it's a bit more difficult to while there is that trust. When it comes to making connections and friendships and community, it can be a little bit more difficult because I think in Danish society, there's a bit of a hard shell around people's friendships. And you have to kind of break through that with time and experience to get to like befriending. Most of our friends, especially when we first arrived, were other internationals because they were seeking out friendships. And the way that those came about and the way that community came about for us in the US was not quite the same here in Denmark.
I think a big difference here is that if you're a native Dane, if you're from here, you grew up here, like the way the schooling system works, you're pretty much with the same group of people from age, say 5 or 6 all the way through. And so like you almost have a second family is what your friends are. And I think it's something that was an adjustment for us because, there's maybe in kind of US culture, it's a little more where you have maybe circles of people that you're super close with, and then more like bar friends or acquaintances or people along the way. And I think here there's almost like a bit of a stigma sometimes on that kind of friendship. It's almost looked down as if it's almost like a superficial friendship. But at the same time, like, it's not superficial to be friends with someone that maybe you're not as close with as other people. Like, it's just degrees. when you're an immigrant, when you move from someplace else, like you come with nothing but your suitcases. Whereas you're coming to a place where people have just lived and have their friends and their crew. Like when we were in Philly, and I'm sure when you were in Cape Town, like you're not out there all the time being like, I want to find new people to be friends with every single day.
Yeah, no.
So that's why for us, it was like we lucked into a group of friends that were here and fell into that group. And then we signed up for Danish lessons. So it's all other people that are brand new to Denmark that are here. And then over time, we joined clubs, or we met friends of friends and got close with them. And over time, you kind of do end up having more Danish friends. But at the beginning, it's super difficult because you're breaking into a society that exists in its own certain way, and it's hard to break it.
I hear the same about other Nordic and Scandinavian countries. I was in Stockholm. Most people I spoke to, international people, all say the same thing. They're like, I love Stockholm, but it's difficult to find Swedish friends.
Yep.
And I was just like, interesting. Finland is probably similar. It's also similar in the sense where you have two friends and like, oh, when did you guys meet? Like, oh, we were born together. It's like, like, yeah.
Right.
It's like, and Finns are very, it's true. In general, they are quite introverted, and it's difficult to get them to come out of their shell. You have to throw back, give them a couple of tequilas.
Yeah.
I think that's true with all the Nordics. Is it just takes a few beers and a few shots, and suddenly the introversion is gone.
It's just absolutely gone.
It's almost like you said, where there's different things about the seasons that you kind of lead into, and you're like, a lot of it is alcohol.
Yeah, no, it's really true.
Because in the summer, you have the long days. You can go outside and drink alcohol outside. In the winters, it's dark and cold, and you stay inside and drink alcohol. And those are the different things you enjoy about each season.
But a common theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a common theme. And it's so interesting because it's like, that was one of my main tools of getting friends. And I guess I can say friends in inverted commas sometimes because, and that's all right. I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. Sometimes you just want to have a party with people. And then even if you don't speak to them again for that day, it was awesome.
Yes.
Right?
I do feel like that is that's sometimes what's lacking. I find that, and you know, it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just a different approach.
Yeah.
Danes often, I think, don't like to have those sort of temporary friendships, or knowing, you know, okay, I'm just gonna chat with the people near me on the beach, and we're only gonna hang out today, and then it's gonna be like a, well, see you never kind of thing.
Right.
And yeah, sometimes it is nice to just have a chat with somebody and then go on your way.
Yeah.
And I think it's, again, maybe because things are a little bit deeper, a little bit more private. The idea is that you wouldn't engage and enter somebody's social space and physical space unless you had that you know, that invitation to do so, because it is a bit more introverted, it is a bit more private.
Yeah.
I'm curious too in Finland, because I know something I notice here in Denmark too is language becomes a bit of a thing, and and I'm sure Finland's very similar, where especially in Helsinki, almost everybody speaks English very fluently and comfortably. But at the same time, if you can revert back to your native tongue and you're sitting next to somebody at a dinner party or in a bar, like you're going to flip to Finnish. Whereas we see the same thing here, we both flip to Danish. Is that how it is as well, that you can be with a group and suddenly the conversation flips from English to Finnish, and you're kind of sitting there and you're like, okay, like when's it going to come back around to English again, or like whatever else? Is it similar in that way?
Yeah. You know, that was probably one of the things I hated most about Finland in the beginning. Especially when I first moved here, I felt really isolated. It was like being deaf. I would, especially when I was hanging out with not necessarily my own friends, but the friends of the partner that I was with. And I remember there would be times where we would go to a party and it's all her friends, and then next thing everyone just starts talking Finnish. And I mean, of course, you can say that, hey, I'm partly to blame for not having learned Finnish, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you understand that. We can move on from there. But this was very early on where I wouldn't have even known anything anyway. But yeah, that was really horrible in the beginning, and I grew to dislike hanging out with people like that who seemingly didn't have the self-awareness to understand that, because when I think about myself, if someone is visiting from a different place and say, I do speak French, right? Let's say they can't speak French. I would be self-aware enough, especially if I invited them. I would think it's my job to make sure that is happening. And I've known some really good people who've been like, hey guys, let's change the language and whatever. But yeah, that used to grate me quite a lot. And I found it very difficult to fit in. Like I'd be invited, a birthday party even organized by the person I was dating at the time would end up, even all the games they would play, whatever, all in Finnish. And I'd be like, hey, listen, I understand, but but that seems a bit...
excluding.
Yeah. And even just thinking about that makes me go, oh,
Sure.
That was a terrible feeling. But then after I kind of went my own way and whatever, I made it a point to make my own type of friendships. And I know a lot of like really good Finnish people who, I hang out with them. They know I'm there.
Yes.
We're all there to connect together. You can speak Finnish whenever the hell you want. When we're together, we'll talk English, and at the same time, I'll be learning some Finnish. Like,
right.
So yeah, that was, to answer your question more thoroughly. Yeah, it was a massive thing. But now it's not so much of a thing because I get to create my own circles. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's no matter what, it's just also just finding those people that you can vibe with. I think a lot of my friends who are Danish do have a partner who is international. So that helps. I think they are a little more in tune to that aspect of not just the language barrier, but some of the cultural things that are different and can come up as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you have any major culture clashes besides just the language that you experienced when you first arrived in Helsinki?
Yeah, Finns have no problem being naked.
They're Danish cousins also. Yeah. But I hear the Finns are quite extreme with that. Though.
I mean, it's a weird oxymoron because they're introverted, quiet, like especially the men, they are outwardly stoic, seemingly uncaring, which is not true, but at least on the outside, and very quiet. Take them to a sauna, he's the first to throw his clothes off and like just walking around, swinging, like, it's like, God damn, like, bro, at least, I don't know, cross your legs or something. Like, bro,
Like, do you want a towel? Like something?
So that was quite weird for me.
Yeah.
But in the end, I like more personal saunas. Like, I like going with, I actually don't do it all the time, but I like going alone or if I'm dating someone. But I have gone to public ones, but those ones, a lot of the time you wear something like, of course there's some people who just are like whatever, but in general, yeah, people wear clothes, but people are also just free with nudity. Yeah. Danes, you guys do saunas?
Yeah.
I think it's not quite as intense as in Finland, where it's borderline national sport. But no, it's quite common. Like, and we've done it. Like they set up along the harbor. They have saunas for the winter time. Like, it's very common for gyms to have saunas, or
even some offices.
Have them. So I think it's quite common. It's something that I definitely have done a lot more in Denmark than I ever did back in the States, where it was more of kind of like a spa thing.
Yeah, the comfort with nudity though is true. I remember being a little bit shocked by that as well, and I over time realized a bit of the mentality, the American mentality, but also I don't think is unique just to the culture in the US, where nudity ends up being sexualized. And I think it's very much non-sexualized here in Denmark, and I think probably in Finland as well. I think the Nordic view on nudity is very much just that it's natural, it's a body. And in a way that's good and that's refreshing. But I do think sometimes the self-awareness that not every culture takes that approach is missing. But at the same time, Denmark is for the Danes, Finland is for the Finns. So I don't expect them to cater to these different things. But even just traveling to other countries within Europe, it's not always the case. There's maybe private dressing rooms and things like that. Yeah. The sauna would maybe exist, but it would be, no, you must wear a towel or swimwear.
Right.
And that can be a big...
Yeah, it's true. I mean, even in Finland, especially, we've got some of these public saunas, especially the free ones. It's like Finns are pretty chill with nudity, but there are still some creeps, still in that, especially for the ladies. I mean, for the dudes, usually, I mean, what you gonna do? I have seen and spoken to some ladies who are like, there are some creepy dudes out there. So it's more kind of like, you just have to be a bit wise about it, right? Yeah. So that's kind of the thing. So that was a bit shocking to me. Mm-hmm. But then I kind of got over it. But I don't do saunas as much as I would like to.
It's refreshing. Like it is not.
I saw you guys' video of when you go plunging.
Cold plunge, yeah.
Do you still do it?
We do it
times a winter. Like we're not like some people do it every day.
Some people do it a couple times a week. I was
no. But there are people that do a morning swim every day and
they swear by the cold plunge.
And sometimes without a sauna too. They'll just do the cold water.
Jump in the harbor and towel off and go about your day. Like the harbor's cold. Yeah. It's 4 degrees. It's cold.
I won't lie though, because I've done ice swimming, but surrounded by ice and stuff the hole that you make in the ground. Yes. And it is true. Like going to the sauna is awesome or whatever. But there has been a time when I've done it. I mean, I did end up going to the sauna, but I stood out in the cold afterwards, and my body just fought to stay warm. So, and then next thing you just get this release of endorphins, and next thing you feel amazing. You're like,
the energy that comes from it is definitely something that doesn't make sense, but it defies logic. But there's something biological that definitely happens there.
Yes. Yeah. There is actual medical studies that blood pressure.
It's good things that forces all the blood to the key parts of your body. Like, believe me, especially here, people tell you all the time about the health benefits of winter bathing and how you're silly for not doing it and help you live longer and everything else.
It's like CrossFit veganism and like winter bathing. It's like, the things that people can't help but tell you about. That's definitely one here. I'm assuming. I'm assuming Finland has a whole set of not just sauna, but other things that they love telling.
Yeah, I like how good salted licorice is.
Oh, yeah, we have that too. Yeah,
I don't get that. Part of me wants to believe that some of these things they don't actually like too. That they're mostly just for show, just to kind of be like, haha, like defiant. Like maybe, yeah. But they're obsessed by it, and they're obsessed with telling you that you should try it too.
Yeah, because I remember reading a little bit of history about it because the licorice, it's got a name.
Lacquid?
No. The actual.
Anise.
No, there's another ammonium chloride.
Oh.
Yeah. So because it started off in Finland, right? So the idea was people believe that ammonium chloride helps when you're sick, coughing and stuff, right? And that's what they would administer. But then they found that kids didn't like it, right? So then they decided to make it sweet, and it worked. Kids started taking it, but it worked too well because then the adults started taking it too.
Right.
And then it became a thing,
It's just what we eat now is salted licorice.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that. So there's a health benefit to licorice as well, apparently.
Yeah. I think if you eat too much, it raises your blood pressure.
It does sound
That's why I avoid it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the taste. I just, no.
And like moving from the US, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of them? Do you have examples of good things that you noticed that are different and bad things that you noticed that are different on either side? Like?
Yeah. I think and I don't know, maybe if you had a similar experience, I think when I first arrived in Denmark, I was very eager to jump on, okay, everything is better here. The US should be more like Denmark.
Right.
And then over time, I started to defend where I came from a little bit and also realize that the more and more that I'm here, that things are just different and there's different approaches to solving the problems of society and finding happiness and things like that. But a few things that I definitely think are better in Denmark, I think the approach to we get more holiday time, right? That's a something that people tend to notice right away.
Yes.
And I think that the US would benefit from that. And the fact that in Denmark, it's very much respected. Again, sort of going to that social contract element of society, that when somebody's on holiday, when somebody's on vacation, they have their laptop shut, they're not accepting phone calls, and you handle it, or that client, that other person that needs their attention, you express to them that they are not going to be hearing from this person for the 2 weeks or 3 weeks that they're out of the office. And I think that that's just sort of understood. And I wish that the US would, it's getting there.
Yeah.
But it's still not where Denmark is as far as respecting people's time outside of work, and that holiday time is huge.
Right. I think Bernie Sanders was trying to propose a 4-day work week and stuff like that.
There's been different politicians, even going back to the 80s, where they had proposals for like a 4-day work week and things like that during different energy crises over the last generations, where, if we go to only having businesses open 4 days a week, that would help with those costs. So a lot of times it's not necessarily for the altruistic reasons or like the societal benefits. It's sometimes more for, so I think that's like one area, 100%. And it is getting better. A lot of things, are changing in the US that it regards to that, but not there yet. But I also think some things that I miss about the US very much is sort of, and we touched on it earlier, like sort of that openness that, I think I hear Danes often say that it's a superficial style of approaching people. I don't think it is. I think it's much more that, and maybe it's because we have less of a structured welfare state, that people do depend on each other a little bit more, and the kindness of strangers is valued, and we don't have that necessarily like that privacy, and we do feel the responsibility to get to know our neighbors a little bit and have a chat with somebody that's near us, and open up to people, even if we know they're not going to be a lasting relation. And I do kind of miss that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, same thing in South Africa. I do miss the openness, like how you were talking about. I definitely do. There was a time when you guys moved here together. Yeah. So at least you can kind of depend on each other in that aspect. I think, especially when I started living on my own and stuff, it was quite easy to feel a bit lonely.
Sure.
Like it was, there was a time when I was just like, damn, like I would love to just be able to just hang out with random people and just talk to them, because sometimes you don't want to just, hey, do you want to hang out? Just want to go to a bar and whatever. So I did that anyway.
So did you.
Yeah.
I failed. It did not work. It was difficult, of course. Yeah.
Because I've been here for 3 days, and I understand why it would be difficult. It's it's not so easy. I mean, you guys seem to be quite outgoing people, but there's times where I'm like, am I secretly an introvert? Like, because sometimes it's like I'll go out and then there's people talking and I'm like, I can just go talk to them and I'm like,
but I'll stay back on the wall.
Yeah, I'll just have a beer in the corner there and whatever.
I definitely feel a change. I know you definitely have said the same thing, that you do feel a bit of a change that way because like, I just think it's what's around you. Like I'm sure South Africa, similar to US, like everybody's kind of doing it. And so you kind of get comfortable kind of being in that positive swirl.
Yeah.
But to say like bars here tend to be more like an extension of somebody's living room than a place to socialize, where it's like you go to the bar with your friends.
True, same.
And just talk to your friends.
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, I'm going to go out by myself or just two of us and let's talk to the random person next to us at the bar. Like, don't do that here.
Right. I will say that take that feeling of having that bit of a barrier between you and random people and double it by 2 and you have Finland. Whereas in Finland, I feel like it's even more like harder to break through because here I went to a place called Refn or something.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Quite a cool vibe, and there's all these long tables and you just go sit with random people and you can just talk to people and whatnot, and it reminded me of Cape Town a little bit. Yeah, that shit doesn't happen in Finland.
No,
like, but I'm being a little bit unfair. When summer comes, the Finns change somehow. Because now you go to events outside and you can just sit with people sometimes and it's a different sort of vibe. So I the way I began to battle that was that I found that I stopped trying to compare what life is like in Finland to what I believe it ought to be.
Sure.
I accepted it for what it was, and I made sure that I self-isolated sometimes. That sounds random, but let me explain. Like, for example, if you do intermittent fasting, right? It's by choice. A certain amount of time you don't eat. If someone forces you to do intermittent fasting,
that's called starvation.
Yeah, exactly. So I began to, and it was a talk that I heard on by some psychologist, I forgot his name, but like, so for certain periods of time, I'll be like, hey, this evening, I choose to be alone. I'm going to chill out. I'm going to do some work and whatever. And if I want connection, I'll reach out to some friends or whatever. And then I'll go out and talk to people, invite them over and whatnot. And by having that balance, I don't know, it made things a lot easier. So if I do go out on my own somewhere, I feel a lot more relaxed because I'm like, hey, you know what? I actually do enjoy hanging out with myself. A lot of the time now, when I go out, I have like a timer in my head of how long and how much energy I have to try and connect with people. And then afterwards, I'm like, yeah, that was nice. Peace.
I'm good.
I'm out. Yeah.
I think it's important to recharge your social battery and to keep that in mind.
There's something I really like that you said, where you said that you have Finland is now instead of what you think Finland ought to be. You live in what Finland is. Yeah. And I think it's refreshing to hear that too, because I think, and I'm guessing that's a pretty common immigrant experience as you suddenly acclimate and you find that this is your home. Because I feel the same way where like, there's this like roller coaster where you go somewhere and it's like, oh my God, it's like a fairy tale. It's amazing. Everything is, oh my God, I love it. And then you kind of go into a depressive point somewhere, which is like, how the fuck am I going to fit in? Like this, can I make it here? Can I do this? And then eventually you come into a place where it's like, this is just home.
Exactly.
And you make your friends for who your friends are. And the people in your life are the people that you want in your life. And you live your life the way that you want to live. And I think it's a challenge as an immigrant too, because in some ways you feel like you're immigrating to a society. And then eventually you realize, no, I'm living here and these are my mates and these are my friends and this is my life and this is what I do. Maybe it's different than it was in Cape Town or Philadelphia for us, but like in the end, like we all crave the same things.
Yep.
And we don't crave a life that's Finnish or Danish or South African or American. we just crave a life.
Exactly.
And you eventually reach that point of I think acceptance is the wrong word because it makes it sound like there was a grief or something in there, but it's where you just reach kind of, maybe a little bit of the 5 stages of grief or whatever. But I think you do reach that point where you're just like, it's just home.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that really stuck out to me that you said that too. I think that's just great advice for anybody going through this immigration experience, anybody thinking about taking an expat assignment or moving abroad, to keep that in mind that, when you stop trying to make your new home, your old home, or comparing the two, it frees up it really frees you up to have the true authentic experience of that new country.
Yeah, I feel like it took me quite a while to understand that though, right? And another thing I found that has helped me is gratitude. I found it sounds like pie in the sky, but it's
live, laugh, love.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think for me, the driving force behind who I am is this idea that, I exist. Right. I'm actually alive. I have my apartment in Finland. The social system's pretty cool. No one's coming to steal my shit, right? And also another thing I noticed is that wherever you move around in the planet, there's going to be some negatives. So it's like the yin and yang. You just have to kind of decide what you're willing to suffer to enjoy the benefits. So for some people, the cold is just way too much to suffer to enjoy not getting your stuff stolen. And some people, it's the opposite way. So it's almost like I've understood. I'm like, I'm not in prison. I can leave. If it's terrible, I can leave. Yeah. But for me, the security is just way more valuable to me than the sun being out 24 hours a day, right? So if the sun started staying in Finland for longer, I wouldn't complain, but
summer's for.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's funny because I think you also make a really good point with that, which is you can't constantly compare between the two. And I think we talked earlier, like you grew up in Durban, then you moved to Cape Town, so you've lived in 2 different places before. Yeah. Similar. I didn't grow up in Philadelphia. I grew up in a different place and then moved there. And like, whenever you move to a new home, whether it's within the same country or 15,000 kilometers away, in your case, like, there's a certain point where you have to turn off that, but what if I was still there? Or, we wouldn't do this there. And that's part of what I think is so important to feel as well.
Exactly. I think my sister, one of my sisters, she moved from Durban to a city called Pretoria in South Africa. And I remember her telling me the story of how she really struggled to fit in the new city she was in. I think she said she kept like a suitcase or like her stuff in a pseudo suitcase vibe for like a couple of years, actually. And it was only when she started taking the things out and accepting and being like, I'm here. Yeah. And it's not what it was. This is different. And only then, now she loves the place. A little too much, in my opinion.
She could be on the coast and enjoying that. Instead, she's in the middle of the desert up there.
Like, God damn, yeah.
But how do you balance that? Because this is something that we've talked about ourselves, is now all 3 of us are creators who are talking about how our life is in our new place compared to our old place. Right. And we have to be amateur, almost like anthropologists, looking at our homes as if it's a social construct we're studying as academics. How do you balance that yourself? Because we struggle with that sometimes, where it's like, am I hanging with my friends, or am I thinking about how their society is reflected in the conversation we're having? How do you balance those 2 pieces? Because you make content, but you also have a life that you're living, and sometimes they can get in a little bit of conflict with each other mentally.
Yeah. Simple answer is that I try and be true to myself. So, of course, the environment you're in affects you in a certain way. You start seeing things a little bit differently. But in general, I think, especially when it comes to content creation, I try and be as honest as I can with what I'm seeing at the time. Because if you have to track all my content, my views do change.
Sure, yeah.
Over time, right? So it's true. Like sometimes I do enjoy analyzing the culture that I'm in. As a scientist, you say, like sitting back and being like, look at them naked people just walking around. It's very weird, right? How do I feel about that? Whatever. So sometimes there is a little bit of a disconnect, but in general, I just try and be like, I'm just a human being living in a new place. We're all humans living on a planet, floating around in ever expanding space. We don't know why the fuck we're here.
Right.
Like, so
hand me a beer. Let's have fun.
Right? Stop thinking about it. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I think it's very fair.
Yeah. No, I think that's one thing that that's a great way to think of it, because sometimes it does get to where I'm like, I just want to live in Denmark and not analyze it. I just want to engage with Danes and I'm not studying them like Jane Goodall with the colonies of monkeys, and like I'm just living amongst Danes, and my life is this now. I don't have to think about why or how or what's changed and what's different. I'm just going to live it, and turning it off every now and then is
to throw a wrench in the whole thing a little bit, at least for me. Sometimes I will admit content creation has been a coping mechanism.
Oh, that's true too.
So it's like I look outside, I'm like, that is dark. It's like 3 p.m. It's cold. It's horrible. I hate this right now. Let's make a video about that. Right. It's cold. It's dark. I hate it. Everyone's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And then I feel better.
Yeah. Sometimes you do just have to find the humor in it and share it with others is a great way to feel connected. Yeah. And that we're not alone in this.
True. I think that's such a big thing. Yeah. Yeah. Feeling like you're not alone. And that's why I find a lot of freedom in humor. Sometimes when it is dark and I don't have anyone that I can contact, it's cold and whatever, sometimes I step back and I separate myself from myself, not to get all metaphysical, but the self, and to just look at how I'm feeling or whatever, and to kind of just chuckle and be like, no one forced you to be there, bro.
Right.
So
I think the Danes have I'm curious if it's similar with the Finns, but the Danes have a very dark humor, and I think a lot of that comes from this existence. Yeah. Which, if you can't laugh at it a little bit, you'll really struggle.
Yeah, like I told you guys earlier, I don't know if the Danes are like this, but the Finns, like I said, are very self-deprecating. Yes. But it's different. It's like it comes from a place of what's the word when you have a warm feeling to something, like but anyway, it comes from a good place, like how you'd laugh at a little brother.
Yes, exactly.
So it's endearing. They laugh at their culture because they love it, but beneath that laughter is absolute confidence in that culture, because the Finns have gone through a lot.
Oh, yes.
Whether it's from being ruled over by the Swedes, whether it's the Russians, who I think, that was difficult. I think it's my life motto. No, it's not. It's a part of my life motto. It's a lot of the time you either laugh or you cry. Mm-hmm. Laughing is just a little more fun.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's a time to cry, but so my time in Finland in general, I feel like I've become a different person. Do you? I don't know if you guys feel that at all. I look back and I've become a whole different human being.
All the time. And sometimes I think, okay, is this just naturally because I've gotten older as I've been here? Are there adjustments that I've made after COVID and maybe my lifestyle has changed? And it's probably all of the above. But I do think that Denmark and Danish culture has had a very profound impact and changed me in a positive way. You know, it's I think I do find myself, some of the things we talked about, being maybe a little more introverted or a little more, but not necessarily that's bad. I think I'm just more careful with my words. I do things more with a purpose when I socialize with people, and in all sorts of ways. I plan a little bit more, and these are all kinds of things that I think I picked up from Danish culture. Things are a bit more subdued. I appreciate maybe quality over quantity when I'm making a purchase or things like that. And I feel like there's a little bit of like the Danish or maybe even the Nordic kind of minimalism has infused a bit into my life.
Yeah. I think my short stint in Copenhagen, it reminded me of certain things that I feel like I missed. Like, I hope you guys know, Danish are viewed as the most extroverted of the Nordic and Scandinavian. And the little cafes you guys have, that sort of vibe, the hustle and bustle of the city. But at the same time, I kind of enjoy not seeing too many people. I kind of enjoy not being in public transport where I have to stand shoulder to shoulder to people. And it wasn't bad here. I think most people were pretty respectful and things work smoothly. And so no shade on that. But Finland is just, or Helsinki is a lot smaller. But I've realized that I've kind of become attuned to that. I kind of enjoy low-key vibes. Of course, I'm not above a nice event and whatever, but I also like how Finnish people are, how we were talking about how they are a bit more reserved. That is also a sign of respect to you as well. They don't want to intrude into your space. You can interpret it as, oh, they're just shitty people who don't want to whatever. But in truth, they're actually like, hey, I wouldn't want someone to just come and sit next to me like that. So then they'll not sit next to you.
It's a respect thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that changed my whole outlook on it. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
that person is actually just, being respectful. Probably hates people too, but that's right.
But societally here, you can just do that. And it's okay. It's okay. I'm curious with that for you, because I think one of the big things for me is not even just about Denmark, but kind of the immigrant experience, where I think for me, probably two of the biggest things, I bet you for you as well, and probably for you, is number one, the confidence that I can do almost anything. Like the fact that you can pick up and go somewhere in suitcases and start over again, like, shit, that's a pretty good thing to have in your mind, that no matter...
Oh, you mean in general?
In general, to be able to do that. Yep. And then the other big one for me is I think you take fewer things for granted because you've had to restart. You don't know how things just work. I'm sure you've had experience when you get to Helsinki where suddenly you feel like, you mentioned before how you felt deaf because you couldn't understand Finnish. But it's also now suddenly in a place where you don't know how to mail a letter. You don't know how to go to a bank. God, yeah. Like all these things. So suddenly you also feel like you're 5 years old again.
Oh my word, yes.
So like to be able to go through these things, like I feel like I'm a different person from that. Whether I was moving to Copenhagen or Helsinki or Shanghai or wherever, like to do that and then find it as your new home. Like I'm curious about a similar experience. Sure. I have a different confidence level than I had 7 years ago leaving Philadelphia.
You learn a lifetime of skills and knowledge and things that you don't even realize are skills and knowledge.
Correct.
In a matter of months when you move to a brand new country.
And you also remember that you're the adult. You're the adult, right? Because sometimes feel like a part of my brain, maybe the child side of me, expect someone to come and save me, but that doesn't. To give you an example, when I split up and I had to find my own apartment, I arrived in this apartment. I just had a few bags and stuff. There was no furniture, nothing, no electricity, no internet, nothing. The first night I slept on the floor. I used my clothes as a pillow. I knew nothing. And that experience of picking myself up while grieving and going through just traumatic change in life, I realized that even when things are bad, you can still fucking do it.
Yes.
You know, you can still, it reminded me that I've got steel inside of me. And no matter how dark it is outside, dealing with the cold and whatever, I managed to fucking push through it, right? Yes. So it's true. I feel like anywhere I go, even when I'm traveling around now, like when I came here to Denmark, you know, I won't lie. At first I was like, how the fuck, where do I get the bloody ticket? Like what the hell is this? But I was just like, I'll figure this out. Okay, let me read, check it out. It's probably similar to Finland in these ways, blah, blah, blah. And that was, it made me feel really good about myself. And it also makes me feel like I could probably make anywhere home.
Yeah.
Obviously, minus a few places around the world that I wouldn't want to make home. But like, yeah, like I could. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's there's so much power in this experience, and you know, I think no matter anybody who's had this experience of moving abroad, whether it's to Denmark, to Finland, or beyond, you know, nobody can ever take that away from them. I mean, they've done something that's a big deal, even in a place that is often looked at as a bit cush, and people are happy in Finland and Denmark, and it's a very easy place to have a good life. That doesn't mean it's not a lot to learn, a lot to adjust to, and that it isn't a challenging experience along the way. I just have so much respect for other people who do this or have done this multiple times.
So much respect. You know? And I guess to ask quickly, where do you guys see like the content you guys do, the podcast, whatever? Where do you see it heading to? Like, what are some of the big ideas rattling around out there?
I mean, I think overall, our mission with it is to just make content that we wish we were able to consume before we moved abroad. I think the biggest thing is being able to sort of help people or just sort of empower people that are maybe having a bad day living abroad. As far as what we want to do, obviously, I think continuing on this path with the expanding into the podcast sphere has been a really nice natural next step. I will have a book coming out next year. Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
What's it called? Is the name to be released?
The name is to be released, but it's a lot on sort of the lessons that have been learned while living in Denmark. So that's a nice project that I'm working on. I
want to read it, and then you need to give me some tips.
Absolutely.
Because I tried. And I got through like 10 pages and then I was just like,
Writing is a whole different way of making content. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that's sort of where we want to take it. What about for you?
World domination. Yeah. I guess a lot of what you're talking about now, to put it simply, and I heard someone say this on Instagram. It was a monk. I forgot what his name is. He's this Asian guy. I forgot his name, but he says, well, I'll just say it in first person. My purpose in life is to live a pleasant life, and if I can, help others do the same thing. And that basically sums up what I want to do. But on top of that, other layers is I want to be able to have different sorts of conversations with different kinds of people, because I believe that we are humans having a human experience. We all don't know what the hell is going on. I don't know how I'm here right now, right? When I take the time to just think about that, I'm genuinely radically blown away. I think someone crunched a few numbers out and said that your chance of existing was 1 in 400 trillion or something. If you take into account the world coming into existence and humanity and blah, blah, blah. So I have won a lottery. And so if I'm not waking up, at least attempting to allow myself to be grateful for that, for just a little bit, I feel like I'm doing myself a disservice. I'm doing myself existing a disservice. So by doing that, I don't know, it makes everything else much easier to bear. So yeah, it is cold outside. It is dark, but fuck it, I'm alive. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm having an experience and I want to share that. I love that.
Exactly. So I just feel like, especially people living in Western countries, they're so great at complaining. And I feel like, coming from South Africa, I feel like a lot of people just don't know how good they got it. And I mean everyone. I'm talking about the people that live here or born here. I'm talking about immigrants, asylum seekers. If you live anywhere in these countries that we're talking about, man, I wish I grew up with that. Holy shit. Like, there's just so much. If you just put your head down and you complain a little less and you practice gratitude, I'm not saying you don't fight for better things. Sure. Fight for it. But do it with the knowledge, knowing that things are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
That was a long answer, but
yeah.
That's a beautiful one at that.
And I think a great place to end here and keep that in mind, that gratitude in mind for the next time.
Yeah.
But Chico, thank you so much for joining us today. And for people that want to get more of you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you guys. I really appreciated this. This was awesome. It's a nice little cherry on top of the cake of being in Copenhagen. But yeah, I'm all over social media. I mean, on Instagram, Chico Muya Official. I'm sure you'll put links or whatever.
Yep, all the links in the show notes.
Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and hopefully, well, you will be hearing this on my new podcast called Easy Vibes. So yeah, all over the place. And for you guys, thank you for joining me.
Yes, it's your podcast too.
Yes.
And I'll obviously put all the links to your guys' pages as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's what are you doing in Denmark? The podcast, and then on social media and YouTube, it's Robe Trotting.
Oh, so amazing!
Find us there.
Merci.
Yeah.
Cheers,
Thanks
guys.
for today.
Yeah, appreciate it.